They seem such nice boys, don't they? Well, that's hardly what people might say about Genesis P. Orridge, whose mixed media shows with his band Psychic TV are intended to shock and disturb. Psychic TV are a world away from glamour bands like Culture Club and Duran Duran. This is the other side of pop.
Of power! Of power! Of power! Of power!
This skinhead figure is Genesis P. Orridge, perhaps the one performer from the punk era to have remained genuinely anarchic and uncommercial. He's the man who once said he'd done everything the Sex Pistols had done, without taking the money. But his origins are not what you might expect.
There were two reasons that I became a Sunday school teacher. One was at school, the head of my house at school was in charge of the Christian discussion circle, and I was always hated by him. And I knew that it was a very uncomfortable position to be bullied by one of the staff. And nobody wanted to be the secretary of the Christian discussion circle, so I thought, if I reverse my normal response and volunteer, it's going to be an interesting situation. And it was. From then on, I was protected, even when I was being very mischievous, because I was the secretary of the Christian discussion circle, therefore I must basically be a nice boy. And I think that was round about the time when I learned that reversing people's expectations actually had quite a powerful and potent effect. That often bashing on the brick wall was a lot less constructive than walking round the side and shaking somebody's hand, still carrying the secret bomb in your back pocket.
Orridge first let the bomb out of his back pocket in 1976 when he staged an art show called Prostitution at the ICA, which exploded, not entirely as he planned, in the headlines. Because of this experience, he moved away from the more elitist art world and towards the avant-garde of rock.
I don't blame the public for being very suspicious of the art world at all. Although it's a shame, I think that in the majority of cases they're quite right to say that most of it is a joke.
But what did Orridge himself think of the rumpus his show caused in the public?
My sympathy rested with the man in the street. I thought that I was involved in something which was basically rubbish, and that what we were doing was being treated very insensitively, and also it was too easy to sit in a nice protected art gallery with people with cocktail glasses. Yes, very interesting and meaningful, when in fact you knew that they probably had less understanding of your emotions than the taxi driver who took you there.
You may say you are the only, but you're ugly to me.
The average taxi driver, however, might have more than a little difficulty with the abstract theories that lie behind Psychic TV's peculiar mixed media shows, which are Orridge's version of television. They involve scenes of horror and torture, which we're unable to transmit.
Perhaps we're the first group which are doing truly surrealist television, in that we are using television to investigate the subconscious and the unconscious. Where Salvador Dali would do a fantastic painting, we would try and get the same jarring of sensibility, the same confusion leading to revelation by juxtaposition of television images, film images and sound, because as most people realize, film and sound are integrated in order to manipulate the emotions and the perceptions of the viewer. And they are being bewitched, and they are in that sense very vulnerable. What we try to do is in a sense be the obligatory bull in the china shop and churn around images, concepts of initiation, the banal with the strange, the obvious with the obscure, to find out what happens and to short-circuit the training that the brain has already had to be accepting without thought.
Orridge's house is packed with a mass of menacing artifacts, from miniature Hitlers to wolves' heads and shells full of skulls. But it all seems at odds with the quiet domestic life he leads with his wife Paula and daughter Caress. And how will she react growing up surrounded by these images of violence?
I don't think she has that much violence compared to what she's going to be subjected to with television, with she goes to school. I'd rather her know the truth than grow up in a world of, you know, being nice and lovely. Because here she might have this room of reality, but then she can go up into her room and be a child.
Despite the axe they keep on their front door, the Orridges bear no malice towards the persecutors shocked by their lifestyle. Psychic TV take their mission to inform people about the evil in the world very seriously, even as far as playing tapes at their concerts of Charles Manson and Jim Jones in the throes of a massacre. So how do they explain this apparently morbid interest in the sinister and the tragic?
I think everybody's interested in weird and strange things. That's why the News of the World sells more than any other newspaper. It's full of rape, and it's full of decadence, and it's full of corruption, and yet it pretends to be on a platform of indignation. And I think that, as an example, in a way, sums up one of the basic problems that we have in this country and in a lot of other countries, which is that people actually commercially exploit the bizarre or the tragic whilst pretending to be indignant about it.
Psychic television has created a weird cult called the Temple of Psychic Youth, which appears to be a loose association of people who share interests and lifestyles similar to those of Mr. and Mrs. P. Orridge, and a desire, like theirs, to flout convention. Orridge maintains that neither PTV nor his previous group Throbbing Gristle have ever sold out.
When everyone else was taking the money and was being manipulated very quickly by A&R men and record companies, we were the only group who actually stuck it out and refused point blank to do that. And when it looked like it became possible, we actually disbanded.
Come out to the bus.
It's a 1966 school bus, and it was chosen because Ken Kesey and the Merry Pranksters drove around in a 1966 school bus, which I was very fortunate to visit in Oregon a few years ago and meet Ken Kesey. And that spirit of freedom and exploration and of traveling around in a nomadic way with a unit of people dedicated to the expanding of frontiers of what is possible and how people can relate to each other is one of the essential central themes of our attitude and way of life. It's also very practical because, as you can see, it's our entire satellite of life.
The drug taking has begun.
One won't make two, no three. And everything you say is language and your soul, which you control with your words as they fly around like tiny birds that
I misunderstood the slang in Chicago. Acid meant acid burn, which was just street slang for sampling off other records, sampling rare groove beats and tiny 2-bar bits of James Brown and then spinning things in. And I'd always been saying, and so had most of the band, that we were looking for a psychedelic dance music. So in my naive way, I'm thinking, oh, right, acid, psychedelic, LSD, and so on. That's not all the story, but that's how I was perceiving it. So when I was looking at it, I was looking for a dance music that you could get lost in and that would have, as Timothy Leary says, the equivalent of a psychedelic effect through sound, light, and rhythm. We've found in America that people have been misinformed about the acid house movement, and we're always more or less we're told, oh yes, acid house is dead now, it's not happening anymore, but in fact it's just been retermed rave. So if you hear people talking about going to a rave, it's what was once an acid house party.
Oh, wow.